Breaking news here at Missed Apex Podcast. We are responding to the absolute shock announcement and the not at all leaked news that Adrian Newey is going to be joining Aston Martin. And it could have been a sensational news story dropped in from the ether, but it's been leaked by just about every press outlet for the last couple of weeks. And to be fair, Joe completely called it, not only on the show last week, but also in Miami, so around May time. He's rejected the advances, I think, most notably of Ferrari, who he was in serious talks with. But we now know that the 2025 car is going to have some Adrian Newey influence mid-season, and also he's going to have a major stake in the 2026 car. Joining me is Matt Trumpets to say what he thinks about all of that kind of thing. Hey, Matt.
Hey, just ignore the lorry backing up in the background and all the honking.
No, it's all right. That's not the worst thing that's happened.
Part of the charm.
Because we're doing breaking news, only half of your face is on the YouTube. So that's the least of our problems. I'll fix that while you say things.
Yeah, no, it is like my wife was sending me this news. So that's how leaked it was. It was a very open secret, which most things in Formula One get to sooner rather than later. I don't know. To respond to it personally, I find this the worst of all possible outcomes. And maybe it's just my background, but it looks like once again, the richest person gets to play with all the toys.
Yeah, it's like almost like you don't want to say, oh, it's a waste, because then we're assessing the chances of this actually making a massive difference for Aston Martin. My suspicion is, it doesn't matter which designer you brought in to Aston Martin. I don't think they're in a position to be a championship winning team.
Well, yeah, certainly not right now. It's, as we've seen, even when you get everything right, let's take Red Bull. Once they got the Honda engine going, it was several years to really get to the point of contending. Or take McLaren. How long have they been in the wilderness? It's not an overnight journey. And Newey, as good as he has been at his best, it's not like every car he ever designed was automatically so much better. You immediately have a championship winning car. He has a history of being occasionally inconsistent with his designs. I'm thinking of the McLaren test design that they never were able to even race because it kept on catching on fire. But, you can go back through his history for all his championships. He's had plenty that were not.
True, but he also hasn't been at a team where he hasn't won races. So Williams, McLaren, Red Bull, he has always designed a race-winning car at some point. So it's certainly a hope, but also we don't really know about the role. The role that's been announced makes it almost sound more like a business partner, like it's Newey Inc. coming in. So he owns shares. He's obviously going to be consulting. But I think if you're a Stroll fan or an Alonso fan, you're hoping he's in there with a sketchboard and a pencil and paper, designing it from scratch. And I'm not getting that impression that he's going to be there in the workshop, in the lab, going, with a light bulb moment, going, we just need titanium bolts.
Yeah, and you have to wonder to an extent, the stock ownership. I think we're seeing increasingly as being a way to tap dance around cost cap restrictions.
He would be exempt as one of the top 3 employees anyway, unless they're completely circumventing that altogether.
But I'm also hearing, cost cap rules are changing, but I think that it's going further down, that stakes in and stocks are being offered in lieu of salary, which is a very American sort of thing to do at a certain level, at a senior level, that would allow them to financially outcompete other teams. But I still, to me, the most exciting thing, and it would have been legendary, would have been Hamilton and Newey at the same team at the same time. I'm just feeling that, I guess, as a Formula One fan, as a sports fan in general, is a bit of a loss.
I get what you're saying, because it's going to come across as an insult to Aston Martin when I said, it's a bit of a waste. I think what we're saying is, if you are looking at Adrian Newey go to an extant top team now and go and make that bit of difference to push it over the edge. Go and work with Leclerc and Hamilton, or remain with Verstappen, or go across to Mercedes, who are going to be coming back with a bang with Russell and Antonelli. That feels like a more present operation than a team that is currently struggling behind the Williamses, fighting Haases, and it's frankly nowhere this season. That feels like too big a turnaround to say, right, we're going to go into this new regulation set and Newey's just going to magic us to the front of the grid. I'm not saying that can't happen. And we saw with Braun, that story, that leap up the grid, but it's definitely, it would be a low percentage. So if Aston Martin was to come out in 2026, all guns blazing with a championship winning car, that would be extraordinary and would totally justify the decision. But if we're going to bet now, we're not going to bet our houses and our mortgages on that happening.
No, and I think crucially, if we're going to talk about a situation like Braun, first of all, that was years of Honda development that they capitalized on at the end. But importantly, you're dealing with absolutely stable and mature power unit regulations. All the engines were about in the same place. And as we saw in 2014, when Mercedes showed up with the best power unit, if you've got the best power unit at the start of a new set of regulations, that will forgive an awful lot of aerodynamic sins. He might design by far the most efficient aero, but Red Bull had a Renault power unit in 2014. And where were they exactly?
Yeah, and that was
nowhere near. So the new power unit regulations, I think, are going to be the biggest, most important thing when they show up. If you've got it right and you're at the sharp end, then that's going to be a huge advantage for the first season or two.
Help me with something here, right? So
Yeah, sure.
Red Bull have got Red Bull powertrains, right? Like they had Tag Heuer engines back in the day. When there's a problem with these power units, they go to Japan, to Honda, because let's be honest, it's a Honda power unit that Red Bull are running. So is the Aston Martin Honda going to be basically the same as the Red Bull powertrain, just that the Red Bull one's got a Red Bull badge on it? Or is it now another branch? Is it like so Red Bull powertrains are taking control of that operation with what is essentially the Honda engine. But this new Honda power unit that's going in the Aston Martin, is that a different team of people, a different team of engineers? I'm very confused.
You've asked a question that I cannot fully answer in terms of personnel, but I think in terms of intellectual property, the Honda IP is massive and has a lot more Formula One exposure than, let's say, Ford, whose previous engagement ended, I don't know. I mean, maybe through Cosworth, they were in through the early 2000s. But Honda has been here and they have been on top of a lot of these, the what is it, the TDI, sort of the double combustion chamber that they've been using, and a lot of the efficiencies. And certainly if you look at the RAH 21, they borrowed plating from the motorcycle division. They borrowed turbines from the jet division. and yeah, the Aston will be getting a Honda power unit. Red Bull will have branched at the point at which Honda stopped being the name. And given the fact that the power units have been frozen, there's not a lot more for the Red Bull team to be learning from Honda. They're on their own as comes to the next set of regulations. Right. They've gotten what they got up to 21, and they will have those learnings with them. But from 21 to 26, that development is now, the Honda power unit is now the Honda property.
And
Red Bull will have gone its own way.
Where did Ford slip into this?
Well, they were originally brought in to help with the electric side of things, because they do rally, which is hybrid now, and that was thought to be a good fit. But they seem to be stepping into more of an equal partnership based on just the occasional news article that floats by. Really hard to say. Ford is a massive company. They will have divisions and years of research. And as we've seen, a lot of times someone will go look in a desk drawer and find something from 70 years ago that winds up being very relevant again. Ford will have that history, and they do compete in a lot of top motorsport series. But my money would be on Honda being better. But obviously, the person to bet on here would be Mercedes. They have a real habit of showing up at the beginning of regulations with an advantage.
Yeah, I think
over everybody else.
I think Honda can make a power unit. Is it your conversation with Tom McYoung that I was definitely awake through?
I'm completely.
Yeah, I'm still recording. Yeah, this is the dangers of working from home. Is there anything I can help you with, my sweet? Oh, okay. Can you use a different Zoom account?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just going to leave that in. That's the hazards of working at home in the
It does happen, yeah.
Yeah, and we have to share a Zoom account. So help us afford 2 Zoom accounts by supporting us at patreon.com/MissedApex. Oh, by the way, we're going to do a Patreon show. We haven't done one all summer. We are going to do one at Watkins Glen. We can sit and record one on our phones or something.
Yeah.
Right. Trying to remember where I was. So your interview with Tom McYoung that I was awake through most of at Mobile One, and he heavily insinuated that it was easier working with Red Bull with the Honda power unit than it was for Honda working at McLaren, and he was alluding to that size 0 concept being particularly restrictive. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but that's the sense I was getting. So I think Honda can make a power unit. So that I don't think that's going to be a massive factor on an equal footing. Surely the regulations are going to try and avoid a 2014 situation. Surely F1 isn't going to sleepwalk into a 2014 type situation where just one power unit manufacturer runs away.
Well, now that Renault may not be on the grid for 2026, I think you can probably admit that it'll be a bit closer amongst those that remain. But don't forget, Audi is showing up for the first time in a long time. And Red Bull Ford is a brand new partnership as well. So it's very possible we could see a widespread, especially the first season. And I don't recall off the top of my head how restrictive the development is. But I know that much like they put wind tunnel and CFD testing into increasingly restrictive frames, I know that there's now limited amounts of dyno time they have. There'll probably be limited amounts of developments that they bring, because the whole point is to keep the sport on an even financial keel for the teams, rather than the fastest, biggest, most impressive engineering developments that we couldn't really afford but had no choice but to try and make anyway.
All right. So 30 million a year is, I think, the figure. 30 million a year.
Yep.
That is spicy, plus shares as well.
That is.
Yep. And so you go, well, why didn't he go to Ferrari? I think we're still on the question of how much of a difference can he make. So I think we danced around the power unit, but I think all things being equal, you're gonna find the Ferrari team is gonna come out with a decent power unit. If Ferrari can do anything, let's make engines. My goodness. So if he'd have gone to Ferrari, I think he makes an immediate impact, because his main role isn't there on the board, drawing wavy lines. He would go to Ferrari with a decade's worth of secrets from Red Bull and could go in there, fault find, tinker, consult, and really have made a difference and really push Ferrari back to the front. Like that's my feeling. But it looks like the conversation with Vasseur, he said, well, Adrian Newey wanted more control. I think the rumor is that he wanted hiring influence as well, so that he could, influence who the team brings in. So basically, he wanted Ferrari to be much more of a team Newey thing. And look, Vasseur is the king there, so it's up to him whether that fits in with his management structure. I wonder how that has gone down then at Aston Martin. So does he have hiring and firing power at Aston Martin? Can he veto a certain personality or engineer coming in? Can he get them to sack someone? Has he got that level of control? Because if he asked for it at Ferrari, surely he asked for it at Aston Martin as well. But just my overriding feeling is he could have gone to Ferrari and won championships, and it's a much longer shot to do that at Aston Martin.
Yeah, I think you'd be correct about it. I would argue that his impact at Ferrari would be even simpler, is that people would be willing to move to Ferrari from the UK. If they set up, if he was located in Italy, and if not, they would have set up a design office in the UK, which would have meant more top engineers, more talent to choose from across the board. Because at a certain level, who wouldn't want a chance to work with Newey? Well, that's still something you can put on your resume. You see what I'm saying? And but you're right. I think Aston is a longer shot because they're farther away right now, because the power unit has to be right and has to be best. And even then, like I said, as good as Newey is, and he's very, very good, he's not always right. He doesn't always get everything right. And if he gets it wrong, sometimes he gets it catastrophically wrong, which is, I think, the flip side of him also designing championships personally.
I've just looked this up. So if this is wrong, let me know. But he was reported to have been getting 10 million a year at Red Bull. Obviously, we don't know what the figures would have been at Ferrari, but Ferrari have got a budget. But if Aston Martin, this alludes to your point of, one team getting all the toys. If they can afford to triple his already massive, massive wages, plus, a shares deal, which makes the business side lucrative, it does show the power that the Strolls have and the power they're willing to throw at what it must be Project Lance Stroll, right? They're still looking at making Lance Stroll world champion. Let's say they do come out with a championship winning car in 2026. Are they going to sit there and watch Alonso win the F1 World Championship with Lance Stroll politely clapping at the bottom of the podium? They're not going to let that happen. How does this work? I don't get it.
Well, I mean, that assumes Alonso continues to drive for them until they get a championship winning car, which we're now going to say is going to be, 26, 27 at the earliest, which would put Alonso close to 50.
How old is he now? He's
slightly, 43. I think he's just about your age.
When Raikkonen retired, he was the last driver older than me. So now that's how I can track it. So Alonso is like the school year below me. So he's like 43. So yeah, if we're talking about, into his late 40s, I think he's retiring come 46. But he can't be at his peak at 46.
No,
it's not going to be the case. He's gonna reaction times are going to diminish. Enthusiasm is going to diminish. The ability to get through a season. It has to, or F1's just not difficult enough, or he's superhuman. So are they just hoping that he'll diminish to the point where Lance Stroll eventually beats Fernando Alonso? I don't know. Unless Fernando...
It's going to take some more diminishing, because Alonso's, and this regulation set in particular, it might be different going forward, but this regulation set, aerodynamically speaking, really puts a premium on experience. Alonso has good racecraft. He's got loads of experience. And I think that's why you see him outpointing him, not just pure pace.
In the last 8 seasons, Lance Stroll has only beaten Sirotkin, and beaten Sirotkin in when the Williams, it was a rubbish Williams, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was Q3 out in Q1, sorry. But, with better drivers, it might have been a Q2 car. That was an argument we had at the time. But basically, at that level, you had Kubica beat Russell, and nobody seriously thinks that Russell wasn't the better driver in that team. But it's just, you're relying on cars DNFing or having accidents up front. So there's a lottery there. So that's the one time he beat a teammate. Other than that, he failed to beat Perez, has failed to beat Vettel, and obviously failed to beat Alonso, which I don't think is a surprise. So he's now at what you would imagine would be the peak of, the natural peak of an F1 driver, at the height of his powers, perfect age, perfect amount of experience. He's not going to get dramatically better. So this is the level that Lance Stroll is at. For him to be a champion, which must be the point of spending 150 million on an Adrian Newey contract.
Yeah, if you look at his whole history in this sport, you'd think that would be the point.
So, that has to be the point. So at some point, you need a teammate that Lance Stroll can beat. And so you look at the current grid now, and that would be there's a limited field of drivers. You go, let's bring that driver in, and Stroll is going to beat that driver. And the driver's probably going to have team orders against him anyway. And I think there's a history of the Strolls imposing team orders.
Rumored history. I don't know how proven it is. But, the things with Stroll are always those rumors will follow him around, that he's had teammates that were ordered not to pass him and that he's had way more preparation than anyone else could afford, which if you have the money, you can't fault necessarily them for doing that, but it does distort the picture.
But if Newey built a car that Verstappen would win the championship in, or Hamilton would win the championship in, or Leclerc would win the championship in, Stroll isn't necessarily going to win in that same car. So it's going to have to be a massively dominant car.
Yes, it's got to be a 2014 Mercedes gap, you'd think.
With no competition from a teammate. I mean,
or either a teammate who's just like, yep, show me the money. I've already won my things. I don't need to, I have no ego need to be faster. I'm just here to make a paycheck and enjoy the atmosphere. Or genuinely a teammate that is not yet capable of beating Lance on, I guess, experience. But then if he's not capable of beating Lance, is he going to be there to pick up the constructor's point that you also want? So I just don't know. It's weird.
If Stroll takes a massive improvement in general pace and ability, then fair play. And then Newey comes in, championship winning car. You go, okay, the hands up. But that doesn't seem like the most likely thing. And I've got a big working class chip on my shoulder, which is...
I know you do. I've got a big middle class chip on my shoulder when it comes to people who have that level of advantage. It's hard not to just automatically let it get under your skin. But I will say...
I watched the wrong sport for that to have that.
Yeah, you definitely picked the wrong sport for that. What I will say about Stroll, though, I don't think it's pace, because he can drive the car fast. The thing to me that he misses, the reason he doesn't beat Alonso, is its consistency and I think a bit of mentality. He has yet to mature on that level to be the kind of consistency we saw Norris and we saw Piastri growing into now with McLaren, and like finally this summer, he's starting to hit the kind of consistency you need to really be a potential champion in terms of tire management and stuff like that, in terms of not getting impatient, in terms of understanding what's the most I can get out of the situation I'm in right this second, and then making sure you extract it. Stroll is impatient. He doesn't always stick around to make sure that happens. And when he gets frustrated, he increases his error rate massively. If you put him in a car that might win a championship, it would be an interesting journey for me to watch him go on, to see whether or not he could get on top of that, or whether anyone could convince him that's what needs to be done.
If it was to happen, I think I'd be quite upset. I think if it would be this story of like decades of unparalleled access to advantage via wealth, a scale not seen before in Formula One. And if we think the buying of a team for your son was excessive, then tripling the wages of a legendary designer and giving him shares to bring him in, to bring that advantage in. And then, I believe, to make that happen, to get to the Drivers' Championship, it would have to be a dominant car, and you also would have to have that compliant teammate. If all that happened and Lance Stroll became world champion, I would be beyond disappointed for the sport, as from a fan point of view. I'd just be gutted that that's possible, because it was already, I know, well out of reach of like most even middle class people. But to take it to that step, it would be extreme. And so I still have a little bit of faith in this sport and in motorsport in general, and its competitiveness and the standard of the drivers, that even at this point, I don't think this will work. I still think you've got Stroll in a Newey car. I'm still putting all my money on Ferrari with Leclerc or Hamilton, or Mercedes with Verstappen or Antonelli, or Red Bull with, who's even going to be left at Red Bull? But do you know what I mean? Like, I still think that this is a leap too far, despite the excessive, extreme wealth and privilege and advantage that's being thrown at him.
Yeah, I mean, and the obvious answer there is Toyota, who spent untold amounts of money and just got absolute bupkis for it.
Yeah.
Although we did get Kobayashi, so at least we got that.
I'm a Kobayashi fan.
I am too.
I don't think they're going to quit. So there's been these rumors of, wow, Stroll's going to disappear off to sports car. I don't think they're going to quit. I think they believe that Lance Stroll can be world champion. That's the mission. And they're doing everything they can to drive forward at it. So, yeah, I don't think Stroll's going anywhere. I think I'll predict that Alonso will be replaced at some point soon. Because, yeah, you're right. It's going to take a lot of diminishing. And I think that this is going to be a long-term project. So get used to Stroll, Newey, and Papa Stroll pushing for the World Drivers' Championship. Whether they can do it or not, I think it's a stretch too far. But this has got to be one of the most, well, it's a unique proposition in Formula One.
It is indeed.
All right. I think that's all the news that's breaking about it. Missed opportunity for fans to see Newey alongside Hamilton and Leclerc at Ferrari, but money talks. Not having to travel talks, and then there's behind the scenes. So maybe Aston Martin are letting him have Fridays off. And Ferrari.
You never know.
Yeah.
He gets his own refrigerator in the company snack.
I bet the cafe is better at Maranello than it is at Aston.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Thanks for joining me, Matt. Thanks for breaking. And everybody who's listening to this, there's going to be a Strat Corner out by tomorrow morning for your lead up into the week. So we spoke with Mike Caulfield, and we had a guest drop in from 2311 NASCAR strategist J.R. Houston, who is a big F1 fan as well. But he's like the equivalent to Mike in the NASCAR world. So he had some questions for Mike too, gave us a little bit of a preview of Watkins Glen, and then we spoke to Mike extensively about the last couple of races, strategy stuff. It's a really fascinating conversation, and looking forward to Singapore and Baku. So go and follow Matt at MattPT55, me at Spanners Ready. Until next time, we will see you later.